All right, let's get into it. We're about to break down one of the most legendary corporate faceplants in modern history. Look, this isn't just some boring story about a company going out of business. This is about a titan, an absolute empire that was handed the future on a silver platter and then literally laughed it out of the room. This is a masterclass in pure arrogance, in short-sightedness, and how to drive a multi-billion-dollar company straight into a ditch. So, picture this. The year is 2000. We're in Dallas at Blockbuster's massive headquarters. Two guys from a tiny, money-losing startup called Netflix, you might have heard of them, Mark Randolph and Reed Hastings, are there to make a pitch to the king himself, Blockbuster CEO John Antioco. Their offer was simple. Buy us, we'll be your online brand. And Antioco's reaction? Well, as Randolph tells it, he struggled to not burst out laughing. And that single moment, that $50 million laugh, is where this whole story really kicks off.
So here's the game plan for this little tragicomedy. First up, we're going to look at Blockbuster on its throne, the absolute king of the video store. Then, we'll zoom in on that one moment where it all could have changed, the $50 million laugh. After that, we'll see how this wasn't a one-time screw-up, but a whole series of bad calls. Then, you get to watch the company literally tear itself apart in a nasty civil war. And finally, we'll get to the hard truth. Adapt or die.
Okay, let's really set the stage here. It is honestly hard to overstate just how huge Blockbuster was in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, this wasn't just a company, it was a cultural ritual. It's what you did on a Friday night. And that entire massive empire was built on a very specific and, let's say, very profitable idea.
Just try to wrap your head around this number, over 9,000 stores. At their peak, they were literally everywhere, every strip mall, every major street corner, from small towns to big cities. You were never far from that big, iconic blue and yellow sign. They had achieved total, absolute domination of physical space. And to run all those stores, you need an army. We're talking over 84,000 people wearing that blue polo shirt. This was a colossal machine, a retail behemoth that felt as permanent as McDonald's. It felt unstoppable.
And don't get it twisted, this wasn't just some lucky video store chain. All the way back in '94, the media giant Viacom shelled out a mind-blowing $8.4 billion just to own them. This was a blue-chip asset, a crown jewel in a global media empire. In their world, Blockbuster was too big to fail.
So, what was the secret sauce? Here's the dark genius behind it all. Late fees. Their whole business model was basically a tax on being forgetful. In fact, the entire idea for Netflix came about because Reed Hastings got slapped with a $40 late fee for Apollo 13. Blockbuster's profit literally depended on you, the customer, messing up. It made them rich, sure, but it also made a whole lot of people hate them just a little bit.
And that brings us right back to that pivotal moment, the knock on the door from a tiny, irrelevant company that nobody, and I mean nobody, at Blockbuster took seriously. This is where arrogance meets opportunity, and opportunity gets laughed right out the door.
I mean, just look at this. This is the definition of David and Goliath. On one side, you have Blockbuster, the multi-billion-dollar king of the world. And on the other, you've got Netflix, this little dot-com startup that was bleeding money, shipping DVDs in red envelopes. You can almost see why Blockbuster felt so cocky. In their eyes, they were the market. Netflix wasn't even a blip on the radar. And this was the price. $50 million. To a company like Blockbuster, with billions in revenue, this was basically couch money. For $50 million, they could have owned the entire thing. The company, the founders, the idea, they could have bought the future of entertainment for a rounding error. But he didn't. CEO John Antioco just saw this tiny, unprofitable company as a joke. And why? Because their core pitch, no late fees, was a direct threat to Blockbuster's biggest moneymaker. He couldn't see past his 9,000 stores and his revenue streams to what customers actually wanted. So yeah, he laughed. And here's the price tag for that laugh. A $50 million offer became a $200 billion, with a B, missed opportunity. You're looking at arguably the single biggest, most expensive strategic blunder in modern business history. That one moment of arrogance cost them everything. But here's the thing you have to understand. Laughing off Netflix wasn't just a fluke, it wasn't a one-off bad day. It was just the most famous mistake in a long, long pattern of them. This was a company that seemed almost allergic to the future, fighting it at every single turn, because, well, the future didn't have late fees.
It was just a cascade of pure fumbles. Back in '97, they passed on an exclusive DVD deal, pretty much just handing that entire new market over to Walmart. Then in 2001, they decided to get into streaming with Enron. Yes, that Enron. A deal that, surprise, surprise, blew up. And then in 2005 came their desperate and frankly pathetic attempt to finally copy Netflix.
And you have to see how shady this was. Step 1, shout from the rooftops, no more late fees. Step 2, secretly replace late fees with something way worse. If you were 8 days late with a movie, they'd just charge you for the entire movie. It was so blatant and deceptive that over 40 states sued them for it. It completely torched whatever trust they had left with their customers. Now, this is where the story goes from tragic to just plain ugly. After all these screw-ups, with the company bleeding out, they actually managed to stumble into one last, real chance to save themselves. But before they could take it, a full-blown civil war erupted in the boardroom. So here were the two sides. On one side, you had CEO John Antioco. Yeah, the same guy who laughed at Netflix, but he'd finally seen the light. His plan, Total Access, was a direct, all-out war on Netflix. It was going to be expensive, but it was a real shot. And on the other side, billionaire activist investor Carl Icahn. His philosophy was simple: stop wasting money on this internet fad and squeeze every last drop of profit out of the dying stores.
And here's the part that really hurts. Antioco's plan? It was working. By the end of 2006, Blockbuster's online service was actually adding subscribers faster than Netflix. Now, they were burning cash to do it, but they were gaining ground. They were fighting back. For one brief shining moment, they actually had Netflix worried.
But Carl Icahn, he wasn't looking at subscriber growth. He was looking at the quarterly profit and loss statement. He saw the spending, and he hated it. So he waged war against his own CEO, and in July 2007, he won. Antioco was forced out. The new guy, loyal to Icahn, immediately gutted the Total Access program to cut costs. And just like that, their growth flatlined. It was over. Icahn won the battle, saved a few bucks, and in doing so, guaranteed the company would lose the war.
After that, well, the end was a foregone conclusion. They had their one shot to pivot, to actually adapt, and the politics inside their own boardroom killed it. All that was left was the long, slow, painful slide into total irrelevance.
And man, look how fast an empire falls apart once the rot sets in. By 2010, bankruptcy. 2011, Dish Network buys the scraps for pennies on the dollar. By 2014, the last of the corporate stores are gone. And today, out of more than 9,000 stores, just one is left. A weird little tourist attraction in Bend, Oregon.
You know, this quote from a former franchise owner, a guy who lost everything, it just says it all, doesn't it? Blockbuster became the poster child, the textbook case study that they teach in business schools on exactly what not to do.
You know, it's really easy to just say Netflix killed a Blockbuster or the internet killed Blockbuster, but that's not the real story. Technology was the challenge, for sure, but the fatal wounds, they were all self-inflicted. Arrogance, greed, and a civil war in the boardroom. The call was coming from inside the house the whole time.
And that leaves us with one final, chilling thought. History never repeats itself, but it sure does rhyme. Blockbuster felt invincible. They were too big to fail. They laughed at the little guy with the crazy idea. So the question we have to ask is, which one of today's giants, which seemingly untouchable empire, is making that same $50 billion laugh right now?